sales is not what you think it is. Sales is about making your customer as successful as possible. And he said, if your motivation is to help your client win, you're always going to win.
It's time! Work, play, evolve!
I want to connect the listeners to the best of the best. Welcome to the Evolved Broker Podcast. I'm your host, Pat Costello, the co-founder and principal at Evolve MGA. Our mission for the podcast is to bring the insurance industry the best of the best. I had the pleasure of speaking with one of the most prominent sales experts in the world. He's the author of 3 Amazon bestsellers and was the #1 salesperson in 3 organizations. He's been called the #1 sales expert to follow on Twitter. His books include New Sales Simplified, Sales Management Simplified, and Sales Truth. My guest name is Mike Weinberg. I wanted to have Mike on because beyond having tremendous success as a sales trainer and author, his style is far more blunt and direct than any other sales trainer we've had on the podcast. He's spoken on 5 continents and has worked directly with companies and individuals in the insurance industry. Mike and I discuss what differentiates him from other sales experts and how the specific tactics in his book, New Sales Simplified, apply directly to the insurance industry. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Varuna. Varuna is the agency management system of the future, built on the #1 customer relationship management tool in the world, Salesforce. Varuna allows you to customize your system, workflows, reports, and dashboards in minutes, and allows you to gain actionable insights about your business in real time, letting you use this intelligence to grow your business in multiples. Varuna allows you to know your business so that you can grow your business. Please visit varuna.com to learn more. Without further ado, here's Mike. Mike, welcome to the Evolved Broker Podcast.
Pat, what a treat. Thanks for having me.
Really glad to have you. And we've had a few previous sales experts, sales consultants, and authors on that specialize in sales. I'd love for you to just describe to the audience what makes your approach to sales different than any other sales book or sales philosophy that they've heard or read about.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know how different it is. What I tell you is it's simple. I think there's a whole lot of people trying to overcomplicate selling, and particularly when it comes to developing new business. And I get that our business may be complex, but the act of developing new business and selling is not. And I am the guy who's kind of carved out a little corner where I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not.
Yeah.
And it's going to be simple, right? Everyone's trying to overcomplicate things, and it's just not that complex. Mm-hmm. And typically, I'll tell you this, the people who try to make selling sound complex, I find that they're using that as a smokescreen to hide the fact that the effort isn't there, or they're not really sure what they're doing.
Yep, I agree with you. And I think that comes across really clearly in your book. I personally have seen a lot of salespeople fail in the insurance world, really growing up with a dad who ran an agency and had to hire salespeople. And I also saw the people that were successful. In the beginning of your book, you break down why salespeople fail. I believe you referred to it as the not so sweet 16 list. Can you break down a couple of those reasons as to why you think it's so common to see salespeople fail?
Yeah, what's interesting is they fail for the same reasons over and over and over across industry, across continents, those 16. And it's funny, that book's been out for a little bit now, so my list is growing and I keep updating and refreshing it.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some common reasons. And let's start with this one because it's really prevalent. We live in reactive mode and we wait. Right? We wait for a lead, we wait for a renewal, we wait for a claim or a client service issue. So we're not on the attack, right? So we're sitting back, and very often when we're in reactive mode and we're waiting, by the time we get to an opportunity, we're late. And that's a whole other conversation, but that's going to bring in the second reason that we're not as successful, because we end up last to the opportunity or late to the party. So we're not leading the prospect, right? We're just column fodder. We're going along down their path. Someone else has defined their buying criteria. They're shopping without us. And we often end up just being a commodity seller or someone providing another price, another fee, another quote at that point. So live in a reactive mode, arriving late where it's really hard to be the consultant or the advisor, not having a strategic list, like a list that you're really committed of ideal profile prospects that you're committed to pursuing and drive your calendar. Like even just those three, if we stop right there, making a commitment to get off your butt, have a list you're going to pursue, and you're going to go after them before they're shopping so you're not late to the party. I mean, right there, we'd increase sales effectiveness. So we haven't even talked about messaging or sales call effectiveness or ability to do, discovery and probe. I mean, just right there, just the discipline of executing is a huge deal.
One of the biggest areas that people fail is putting together the correct prospecting list. How can producers improve their prospecting process? And I have a secondary question to that.
Yeah.
Why should they target more senior contacts?
Yeah, those are two great questions. Let's start with the bigger picture one first. You need a list. You need a strategic, finite, workable, written list. It's where you start. Like when you live in reactive mode, you come in every day, you chase what comes in front of you, you go see your clients, you babysit your friends, you look for renewals. That's not hunting. That's not proactive. The moment you decide you're going to shift from reactive mode to being strategic, intentional to hunting, it's like, well, we're going hunting. What are we hunting for? You need a list, right? So what should the list look like? Well, strategic's a fancy word, and it just means we're putting some thinking into it. I've had the most success in my career and in many people I've coached or trained when we really focused, when we narrowed, right? It wasn't shotgun, it was sniper. We develop an expertise in a certain area, certain vertical, certain type of insurance, certain type of client, and then you start getting traction. Mm-hmm. So you get a narrow list and it's not so many names on there that you don't get to work people over and over, right? Because the reality is when you're hunting, it takes multiple shots to earn a meeting, to earn a callback, to plant a seed. Yeah. So I don't want hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names. You can market, right? You can mass email, you can spam thousands of people, but you can't personally sell to thousands of people. So go ahead.
I'm going to pause you there, Mike, because I saw direct proof of what you're saying watching my dad with his retail agency. He was a generalist for a number of years. And when he made the transition to specifically focusing on one industry, that's where he saw exponential returns. And it was kind of an ironic or uncomfortable thing for him because when you move from a generalist to a specialist, you have to turn away a lot of clients.
Right. It's counterintuitive. I'm totally with you. Yeah. It's because you think you're giving up opportunity and you're limiting yourself to this little box. But I've seen the exact opposite because you become the expert in the space and you start getting referred around and you have a better story to tell because you have all these examples of how you've helped people in this exact spot that have the same challenges. And then eventually someone leaves, like one of your clients, and goes somewhere else. And then they bring you along with them. And all of a sudden you're referable and it's repeatable. And yeah, it's a lot more fun when you become the expert in a narrow band than trying to be everything to everybody, especially when you're hunting, right? It's one thing if you're chasing a few opportunities and you end up selling some things that aren't in the center of your strike zone. But when you have limited discretionary selling time, and we'll get to this throughout our conversation, but the number one reason most of us in sales, and definitely people in the insurance world, don't pick up more net new business is because they don't spend time working on net new business. They're busy and they spend a lot of time doing service and they're control freaks and they don't delegate to their teams. And so they have little bit of time to sell. And my argument is if you only have a finite amount of discretionary selling time available, you better spend it going after the right targets because you could be God's gift to sales. You could be a silver-tongued devil. You could be smooth as they come. You could have the slickest story. You could be the best guy conducting sales calls. If you're calling on the wrong people, there's no way you're producing optimal results. Like it's why picking your targets is the first step in my framework for a successful sales attack. Like it's a short conversation. I mean, if I'm coaching someone individually, within 5 minutes in that first conversation, I'm saying, hey, let me see your list. Who were you committed to targeting and why? Why are those ideal profile prospects? Tell me how they look, smell, and feel like people that get you and your value proposition. Because once you have that, then you can work it, right? And every Monday we shouldn't be deciding, well, who are we going to target? No, that's work we do on the front end. And for a season, maybe it's a quarter, maybe it's 6 months. Those are the accounts, the targets we agree to work, and we hold ourselves accountable. Does that make sense? Like
Totally.
you got to laser focus in there.
Yeah. Maximize and optimize that sales time. And I think a common inclination for a lot of sales folks is to go after the same contact within a prospect organization that you kind of feel comfortable with, or maybe you're just more comfortable going with a lower level person. People don't have the natural inclination to go after a contact that's in a more senior position. Can you talk about the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up again, because there's this artificial fear. Let's just call it what it is, Pat. Like a lot of us in sales, we have this artificial fear of going up higher into the executive suite, into the corner office, talking to an owner or senior level leader. And so we get comfortable playing with whoever the typical buyer is, the person who wants to control the relationship, the person who's really good at negotiating for your last nickel and trying to level the playing field. And, so in the name of fairness. Well, I'm not for fairness. Like, I'm not trying to level the playing field. I want to tilt it towards my advantage. And here's the counterintuitive truth. Typically, and I mean typically like 90% of the time, what do we find at the higher levels of a customer organization, right? When you're dealing with executives and ownership, which is where I believe in your world, right? Your insurance brokers listen, isn't that where they should be targeting, right? Should you be trapped with some mid-level controller person, or should you be talking to someone who cares about the business issues? And the counterintuitive thing that you and I and other people who have had a lot of success selling to executives know is, what do you find at the senior level office? Nicer people, smarter people, people that are interested in solving a big business problem or achieving some great result. They're not trying to take your last nickel. The last thing they want to do is negotiate. No, they have a big initiative. They've got a strategy. They have a huge liability keeping them up at night. They care about the big stuff. So it's counterintuitive. When you get into that level of a conversation, it's actually easier to sell because they want the help, and they don't view you as just a vendor. And they're not really interested in whether if you're a nickel more or a nickel less than the other guy. They want to know, can you bring them value? Do you help people like them and organizations like theirs? And that's why our messaging and our story and our presence is so important when we're selling, because when you're talking to top level people, they don't really care about your history and your features and some of the nuances of the product that you may love to talk about, or that mid-level people who are making a commodity comparison on a spreadsheet, they may care about that. But at the highest level, they're like, how are you going to solve this problem for me? And how are you going to help me grow the business or relieve this headache or achieve this big initiative? And if you can make that level of connection with a senior person, my gosh, sales is so much more fun and honestly so much easier.
I thought that was a really unique point that you broke down. And one other item I really liked when I was reading through your prospecting strategy was including dream targets on that prospecting list. Can you break down what a dream target is? Yeah. We need our typical bread and butter, normal type prospect that we go after, that we make a living on. But man, it's powerful. And there's probably a handful, right, of the type of prospect, I call them monster accounts or dream clients. And if you land one of those, it kind of makes at least your whole quarter, maybe makes your whole year. It's the kind of deal where you get that. I got a friend who's a banker. He's been texting me for the last 3 days. He just closed the biggest deal in his bank's history. He is car shopping today. Like, it's that kind of deal. It was 10x his normal type of deal. And it took an enormous amount of work. So what I encourage salespeople is, you want to go after some opportunities like that. So make a list. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. It's definitely not more than 5 of those monster dream accounts that you really want. But my caution is, while you're putting together a little plan, and maybe every week you try to move the ball forward one little notch, right? And just advance it a little bit with a touch, some type of value creating thing that you send them, or a drop off or a message, or, it takes a lot of effort, right, to move the ball forward at a dream client. Don't become a prisoner of hope. Like, don't ever expect you're going to win that deal, because you still need to make a living, right? You still got to pay the mortgage. You still got to hit your numbers. So you got to work your day in, day out regular prospects and build a funnel and create and advance lots of opportunities in the pipeline. But
Every once in a while, you just try to kick that can down the road a little bit and advance the ball with the dream prospect. And I've been there, you've probably been there, where either you closed one for yourself, or in my business, I get to celebrate with my clients that bring one of those in, and it's a party. Like my friend, that's the banker that has this deal going on. But you don't want to be looking at the end of the year holding that empty bag, because you put all your eggs in one basket and you were all OCD, about that one deal.
Yeah.
And instead of doing the responsible thing, which would be plant more seeds, turn over more rocks, work all kinds of prospects, right, that you're going to try to create opportunities with, don't get stuck. It's a high risk, high reward, low probability thing. And it's awesome when you win one, but you still got to win even if you don't bring in the giant deal.
One of the biggest topics that you touch on as well is figuring out what your sales weapons are. And I really like the relation to war. I think for our company, we just had everybody read the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And he makes a lot of comparisons between the business world and between war. It just fires me up. But one thing you mentioned is that a lot of salespeople underutilize their sales resources. And that really hit me because I see technology and social media as a huge tool to put yourself out there as a thought leader and get on folks' radar in really impressive niche ways by just using really simple tactics. Is there anything that stands out to you that's like, these are the main things that salespeople underutilize as things that could be weapons in their arsenal?
Yeah, all of them, honestly, except LinkedIn, where it's become a giant playground of and time suck for a lot of salespeople.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to LinkedIn. We should use it. But what I see happen is that we get in this like vortex and it becomes a game. It's become Facebook. It's like you hang out there, you post comments, you're playing around, you're looking to get your endorphins from people liking what you do, but you're not really selling.
No, my DMs on LinkedIn are ridiculous. Like, it's like, I know people are just messaging me in automated ways, and I know they don't really know who I am, and I know it's just like a mass blast. So I agree. I feel like it's become a little bit diluted.
Yeah, you're opening up a huge can of worms. We can go down that path about personalization and customization versus automation and spam. And that's part of the reason why, particularly in your industry, why the phone is still so powerful. But let me go back to the initial question that you asked, which is, tools and being creative and what else can you put out there? I think there's a lot of ways. I mean, I have some clients that I became my clients because I was studying what they were doing. And there'd be times like I would write a very short blog post article about a challenge that I knew that company was facing with their sales organization. So I put out a little article, which would get some attention, might be a little LinkedIn post, might be something on my own site. Anyone can do this, right? A couple paragraphs, insight, some about what's going on in the industry. And I wrote a note to the CEO of that company and I linked them to my article. I said, I think this might be relevant in your world right now. Take a look at this. I'm seeing this happen in a lot of companies that look like yours. Mike, could you meet with us? And I'm like, whoa. It took not a ton of effort, right? I put out a little content that was relevant to the people I was pursuing. I contextualized it in such a way, send a little note, said, take a look at this, and boom, I'm having a meeting. And I will tell you, and I'm the first guy to rail against social selling and the charlatans in my industry that tell you, don't pick up the phone, just blog and tweet and hang out on LinkedIn and take selfie videos like, Gary Vaynerchuk or Kylie Jenner and, post away on Instagram. Well, as much as I make fun of that, because I think it's overblown, the truth is I do a lot of it, right? Because if you have a brand and people know who you are and you're a value creator and you have real clients and you have a voice and there's some things you can share because you know the industry, absolutely put out some content. I mean, I have clients today. I mean, it's as simple as where I put out a tweet where I challenged the sales leader with a question and someone in my circle retweeted it and some CEO in Memphis read it and called me and go, hey, I just saw this tweet that someone else forwarded that you put out. I have that challenge. Could you talk to me? So there's just some examples, whether you're writing an article or you're putting something on Twitter or you're just tracking someone online to see what they're talking about. And you're watching some of the news out of their company where you have relevant things you could send them to kind of grease the skids for your phone call, right? And then a lot of what we're doing, you asked about sales weapons. Mm-hmm. A lot of the weapons that we use should be making our life easier because it's a lot easier to call a prospect when you have a reason to call them, or maybe you've sent them one or two things and they've seen your name once or twice, or you send them something kind of unique or fun, maybe even something dimensional in the mail, and you pick up the phone and call them, it's a lot easier to get that conversation when you're like, yeah, I'm the guy that sent you, this, XYZ thing. Okay, you got a minute to chat? I'm seeing this in your industry a lot. What's going on in your world? And that's a very different, even you can hear my tone in my voice, right? Like, you're not some pitch man, telemarketer trying to get an appointment. You're like, hey, I'm seeing this a lot. Are you as a CFO, are you struggling with this thing with your mod? Or are you running up against some business challenges? Because I'm seeing this a lot with businesses I'm working with. And when you have some high-end language like that, and you sound like a value creator and an expert, everyone's defenses come down. They're not resisting this. Who is this salesperson with a pitch and a sales voice? It's like, hey, this guy's playing around in our space. He's got some insight. Even though I got a broker, I think I'm happy. No one's asking me these questions, and that's where I think we have a chance to upgrade our weapons. And we'll talk a little bit more weapons. We have a variety of weapons. You have all the things you use when you're prospecting, right? You have things you send, email, you have snail mail, you have probably white papers or case studies or articles. You've got LinkedIn messaging, you've got phone calls, but you have a telephone. But what happens in all of those things, they all require some level of messaging. And of all the sales weapons at our disposal as professional sellers, I can make the case that our most important, our most critical weapon is what I call our sales story. It's our messaging. It's our value prop. It's our pitch. I just call it your story. And it's basically a collection of talking points that you deploy in all these other weapons. And the reason your story is so important is because bits and pieces of it end up in your phone call, in your voicemail, in your email, in your social media profile, right? In some prospecting conversation. If you're getting a coffee with someone, you're going to use some of your story to position yourself to get them to put their guard down and to warm them up for your probing questions. So your messaging, when it's good, especially if you've got some other creative tools and weapons that you can use to get someone's attention, changes everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Storytelling is a lost art. And it's funny you bring it up, Mike, because we have a guest that's going to be coming on the show in a few weeks here. His name's Carmine Gallo. He wrote a book called Talk Like TED. And he analyzed, every TED Talk that's ever been done and it's
on my other bookshelf in the other room. Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Yes.
Very helpful.
Yeah. He talks about the scientific breakdown of what happens when you have someone that's listening to a story and how their brain aligns with what you're saying in a completely unique way than when you're just talking normally or going through small talk together. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. I was going to bring that up as a common theme between you and Carmine. How does someone tell a great sales story?
Yeah, and I'm gonna do a little bit of differentiation between the brilliance of Carmine and when he talks about storytelling, because all that stuff is true, right? The defenses come down, the emotions kick in, they're enraptured to listen. When I'm using the word story, I'm doing it in even a simpler way. I'm saying telling someone what you do and how you help them, right? And if you have stories to tell, hugely valuable. My trick when it comes to telling our story or positioning ourselves as a seller is really simple. We have got to stop leading with stuff about ourselves, our agency, our carriers, our lines, our history. And we need to lead in with stuff that's on the customer's mind. Because the reality is they don't really give a crap what you do or how much you love your agency or your carrier or your lines or how great you think you are.
Yeah.
What they want to know is what's in it for them. Like, let's just be honest. That's what gets attention. That's what gets their defenses to come down. And I did this subtly a few times when I was giving the example earlier. I'm going to be a little more obtuse about it right now.
Okay.
There's a very simple trick I have. I call it a bridge line. And it's the way you begin your messaging. And whether it's a phone call, an email, a conversation over a coffee, you basically begin the message, the story, the conversation by giving yourself a third-party endorsement. Instead of saying, we do this, we're so great, we're so big, we have this many brokers, here's the lines we represent. You say, you know what? A lot of plug in the type of company, a lot of contractors are looking to us when, or I'm hearing from a lot of CFOs, or I'm helping a lot of companies who, any of those are little bridge lines.
Yeah.
And if you start your story, your message with some version of that, and I'll repeat them again later, whatever you say next is going to be good because it stops you from saying, we're so big, we're so great. I'll do it like I did before. Hey, I'm hearing from a lot of CFOs. They're really struggling with issue A and they're under pressure to achieve result B.
It's immediate credibility.
Because you're saying I'm helping people like you, or I'm in conversations with other CFOs or contractors or dental offices, or plug in the type of prospect that your broker's calling on. And you're basically telling them, listen, other guys are coming to me because they're really frustrated with A. They're desperate to get over liability C. They're not sleeping because of D, and they want to achieve E. You got any of that going on? We should visit for a minute. And all of a sudden, not only do the defenses come down and the resistance goes away, but they're like, wait a second. You help people like that and organizations like mine with those challenges? I got those. I want those results. Let's talk. And you're immediately viewed as this expert, value creator, problem solver versus some guy who's pitching a product.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the lead into the story. That makes everything different.
There's a couple specific elements that you bring up when you talk about the sales story. The first one that comes to mind is the so what test. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about how that's integrated to that story?
Yes. Yeah, there's a long background story to that, but I'll tell it real briefly where I came up with that phrase. And then it's a test we should put everything we say are right through. We should ask, so what? What's the real issue here? And I came up with this on a very painful day, probably the most painful day in my sales career.
Oh no.
Selling through a channel partner who got me a meeting at a huge executive office. I won't go into all the details. It's in chapter 13 of New Sales Simplified. But the bottom line was we were going in for an initial meeting. But my idiot channel partner who got us this meeting billed it as a demo and a presentation. So they weren't expecting to have dialogue with us and answer a lot of questions. And it was poorly set up to begin with. But then we get in the room and this guy's like, hey, I'm just going to tee up your demo with a brief presentation. And for 20 minutes in front of the president of $1 billion division of a company and a committee selected to buy the exact platform that my company was selling, this moron salesperson for 20 minutes gave a presentation. And on the slides were pictures of his company's buildings, logos of his clients, flow charts of his company's performance improvement process. I mean, like the face you're making right now, like I was dying on the inside. And for 20 minutes, he put up self-focused slide after self-focused slide, bragging, no. We do this, we do that. Here's our pretty buildings. Here's our clients. Here's our proprietary processes. 20 minutes into the freaking meeting, the president smacks the table and goes, damn it. I want to see the demo. And I look over at my moron partner and I'm like, you loser. Like, thanks for teeing this up. And I got out of that meeting. The whole thing was a disaster and it's a great story. But that day, it kind of put me on the track to becoming a sales coach because I'm like, I think I could help some people because that should never happen again.
Right.
But I wrote an entire document for my executive team about that's not how you do sales process. And a first meeting should never be a presentation. And here's all the things we did wrong. But my biggest problem was, what was this story showing pictures of buildings and logos of clients? The client says, so what? They don't care. They don't care how much you love your company. They don't care what your building looks like. They want to know what's in it for them. So you asked about the so what filter. Every time we write an email or we're sketching out a voicemail or we're about to create a PowerPoint slide or whatever it is where you're using some messaging, after you write it or say it and you're practicing it, you should ask yourself, so what? What is the customer getting from this? What problem is it solving? What pain is it removing? What opportunity is it helping them capture? Or what result is it helping them achieve? And if it doesn't ring that bell, there is no so what, then don't tell me we provide, we partner, we're the best. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
what's the point?
Make the connection to the customer's outcome.
Yeah. Why should they care?
That's exactly, you just summed up what I said in 3 minutes and 2 words. Why should they care? That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Well, one other point that stood out to me in the sales story was the power statement. Can you give the audience of insurance professionals out there an example of what a power statement could be in a sales story?
Yeah. And I'll use one of my clients as an example. It's the example I use in the book Sales Truth. Instead of saying, we do this, we do that, we're so big, if you've got 20 or 30 or 40 seconds or a minute to do a setup of your company and your offering for your prospect, what I'm going to advocate is that you lead with a few of the big things that you help them with. And then maybe you plug in 1 or 2 offerings and a reason or 2 that you're different in your approach. Those are the 3 building blocks of the story. The issues you address for customers and the outcomes you achieve. That's number 1. And that's what you lead with because that's where the power comes from. What you sell is the smallest part. And I sandwich that in the middle, right? your insurance. If you're the Mack truck people, which is the example I'll use, your trucks. And then a few reasons why you're better and different than the other choices. And those are the three building blocks that make for a great story. So the power statement is when you combine all those in a very conversational tone, whether it's in an email, and this is a great length for a voicemail or an email. This is a 30-second voicemail or a few line email with some bullet points.
Okay.
But what typically I'm going to be the Mack truck sales guy. Okay. I've done a lot of work with Mack trucks, and their typical sales guy is very proud of the Bulldog and made in America. And they are selling for a dealership that has 17 locations, and they've worked there for 33 years, and it's a family held business. And they love to talk about all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But you know what's going on in the trucking world? Everyone who has a fleet of trucks is desperate to find and keep drivers because there's a huge driver shortage. They're under pressure to increase fuel economy because that's a huge expense, especially right now when fuel prices are so high. And they're getting killed by downtime because when your truck breaks, you miss a delivery, you piss off a customer, and you lose revenue. So knowing that, my power statement, if I'm a Mack truck sales guy, and everyone that's hearing this will very quickly translate this into your own world, and you'll plug in your own talking points that fit your type of business. But my consulting to the Mack salespeople, which I do all the time, is why don't you stop telling us how long you've been in business and every Mack truck is made in America and how proud you are of the Bulldog? And what if you said something like this? Hey, Joe, let's say Joe's the fleet manager at a massive fleet of trucks, right? Hey, Joe, I'm helping a lot of fleet managers right now who are absolutely up against the wall because they cannot find or keep good drivers. They're facing tremendous pressure to increase fuel economy because fuel costs are out of control. And they are desperate to reduce downtime because it's hurting revenue and it's damaging customer relationships. Those are the big things I'm helping them with. Some of our new trucks are lined up exactly with the way to solve those particular problems. And I can't wait to share with you some of these offerings. And our dealership's really different in our approach. The way we do financing, the way we do customer service, our footprints put us in a position to be very different in how we could serve you. That's it. That was 30 seconds. But the key, the power came from, I didn't lead with, we're so big, we're so great, we're made in America. I led with, people like you are desperate for A, they better figure out B, they really want to achieve C. And if you can string some points like that together, that is the beginning of a power statement. And whether it's a voicemail, a phone call, the opening conversation in a sales call, or you put that on a PowerPoint slide. Yeah. All of that changes the dynamic, and you bring so much power to this conversation. And now you're viewed up here. You're not a commodity seller. You're the expert who addresses all these issues, and it changes the whole dynamic.
And I noticed when you said that you were in a very calm state, you were very friendly, and you had a very conversational tone as well.
Absolutely. I'm same thing in my own business. I'll give you another example. In my own business, if someone said to me, I'm at a cocktail party, right? Or I'm out with some guys at a ball game and like, hey, man, what do you do? I heard you you're in the sales world, right? You got some books. It would be very easy and very succinct for me to say, hey, man, thanks for asking. I got 3 #1 best-selling books, and I do consulting and training, and I've got some great content. And while my grandma is proud to hear me say that, it's meaningless because unless that day they're looking for a book or some training content or a speaker, I didn't ring the bell. And everything I said was self-focused. I've got books. I'm a speaker. I've got great content. They don't care. But if I pivoted and used that bridge line, and I'll do it real conversationally, I said, Pat, man, thanks for asking. A lot of insurance sales leaders are bringing me in when their salespeople are basically trapped in the renewal mindset, and they're living in reactive mode, and they're not creating and advancing opportunities. And they look to me when they're trying to create a team of proficient hunters who don't plateau and don't get complacent, and they're always hunting and creating and advancing new opportunities to continue to build the book. And they're doing it as a value creator, not a commodity seller.
That hits home.
Right? I didn't say a thing about myself. I said, people like you look to me when, or I'm helping people like you that are trying to achieve these things. And then the natural next thing is, well, oh, that's really interesting, Mike, because I got 3 or 4 of those. What do you do? Oh, man, I do some training. I got some stuff, but tell me more about your situation. You know what I mean? And it's a different dynamic from the pitch, man.
It's just a slight twitch in the positioning.
Exactly.
Right?
But listen, here's the caution for everybody, because it's so natural. If you and I were out for a beer at a party and you're like, what do you do? The easy, natural, reflex answer is, I just tell you.
Yep.
I'm an insurance broker. I work for this great agency. I've got my own business. I do this. I represent all these carriers. Love it. I've got a lot of freedom. That's a really nice answer. But what if you said to the guy, let's say he was a GC, right? And I'm just picking a thing, or a dentist. So you plug in whatever the customer for that particular type of agent is.
Yeah.
But if it's like, man, thanks for asking. I'm helping a lot of dental practices who have had it up to here with the nuttiness with malpractice insurance, and their mod keeps changing and they can't tell which way is up, and it's become a huge part of their business, and they're distracted by all the compliance issues, and I'm helping them navigate the complexity so insurance is not top of mind. You didn't say a thing about yourself. You told them how you help your client. Huge difference.
I hear you. One big topic I know we have a specific amount of time left, and one big topic that I want to get into that I think makes a lot of salespeople uncomfortable, anxious, nervous, scared is the topic of cold calls. And we talked about this briefly, but I'd love for you to go a little deeper into what your tone of voice should be when you're on a cold call.
Yeah. Let's back it up and let's just talk about the whole concept for a minute, because I love how you set this up, even because, Pat, most people have this like automatic, visceral, disgusting reaction, cold call, and we get it like, I'm a child, I'm old, right? I'm a child of the 80s. Uh-huh. So to me, it's like, I better put on Eye of the Tiger and pound like 6 Diet Cokes, because I was making cold calls before there was Red Bull. Uh-huh. Right. Today we put on some trendier piece of music and we pound some Red Bull or 5 Hour Energy. Mm-hmm. And part of my joking when I'm coaching sales teams is that's the total wrong mentality. You don't need to get all hyped up for this. It's not dangerous. No one's going to die from doing this. And the last thing you want to come across is some hyped up sales voice, overly enthusiastic, inauthentic pitch man. Like let's just talk about what is prospecting. You're not calling the phone book. You're not a telemarketer. You are a professional, right? Many of you who are listening to this, you own your own little book, your own business, right? It's your deal. You're an executive and you have a solution, and you're intentionally, strategically targeting people or companies that look like your best clients that likely have a need for which you have a great solution. And if you get that in your head, and let's talk about our why for a minute, okay? My dad drilled this into me when I got into sales, and it was so foundational, and I think it's part of the reason I was so successful. He said, Mike, sales is not what you think it is. Sales is about making your customer as successful as possible. And he said, if your motivation is to help your client win, you're always going to win. And if you think about that in terms of our why, and take out the words cold calling for a minute, and even prospecting, and you think of it as just, I'm going to proactively initiate contact with people that have needs, that are stuck, they're trapped, they're ignorant, they're with the wrong provider right now, and they're so much better off working with me because I'm going to bring them more value. I'm going to solve their problems better. I'm going to service them better. I'm going to find them a better fit. Like, they're going to benefit so much from engaging in this conversation with me. And even if they choose not to advance this to a next step with me, I'm going to sell them on meeting with me because they're going to get a ton of value from the conversation. And if we would go into prospecting with the mentality, I'm not a pain in the ass. I'm not dialing for dollars. I'm not a nuisance, because a lot of us think we're like cold calling's below us. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Yeah. Like, I'm smarter than that, or I'm bigger than that now. And that's like a young guy's game. Or I'm like, no. You care. You're calling them because you care. And you're not calling to bug them and be a nuisance. You're calling them because they need you, and you're calling to rescue. So instead of being ashamed or uncomfortable that you're interrupting, why don't you say, no, I'm calling them because they're trapped. And the very best prospectors I've ever worked with, they take that mentality into cold calling. Yeah. They say to themselves before they pick up the phone or send a note, I'm a value creator. I'm a consultant. I'm going to help this person put the pieces together of the puzzle. I'm going to bring them great value. And I'm calling them not to bug them. I'm calling them because they're probably lost and need a Sherpa or a guide right now. Yeah. And I'm going to be the one to take them there. So I pick up the phone and I already like the person, and I already feel bad for them because they're not my client. Mm-hmm. So with that mentality, you're much more willing to make the call. And then you asked about voice tone. Here's the words I would use. calm, normal, authentic, empathetic, like you and I are talking like humans.
Yep.
That's how you talk to a prospect. Can you have a little bit of enthusiasm, passion? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to sound like a cheese ball, inauthentic, like salesperson, stereotypical? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like that's the worst way to, turn somebody off. So you want to sound normal because you're calling to kind of pique their interest. And one of the things that when I'm coaching on prospecting, I tell people, let's remember our objective. The objective in a prospecting call, and your people may not all agree with me that are listening to this, it's not to qualify. It's to get the meeting.
I totally agree.
You're with
that.
me?
Oh,
So
100% agree.
Because what I see is so many people want to qualify. I'm like, listen, you're interrupting somebody. You're not on solid ground to ask a million questions.
Mm-hmm.
You qualify when you meet them.
Yep.
But because what I'm telling you is most salespeople fail because they don't have enough meetings. Almost nobody's failing from too many meetings with unqualified prospects. Besides, remember what we talked about a few minutes ago? You're not calling the phone book. You've made a strategic finite list of prospects that we already think look, smell, and feel like our best clients. You want the meeting even if there's no opportunity because you want to plant the seed, even if they're not ready to make a move. So part of what that means is you get into the prospecting call along with being calm and having a great story, which we already hit pretty hard, right? Here's 15 seconds of messaging about how you help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reality is you're going to ask them to meet with you and they're probably going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, let me just go down this path for a minute. This is the key to making money as a prospector. You have to expect the resistance and be prepared to overcome it.
Oh, yeah.
Do not expect to be welcomed with open arms. You're prospecting. You're interrupting somebody. I don't care if you sent them the coolest dimensional gift in the mail and you've left a lot of messages, or you get them on the phone and you ask them to meet with you. Their automatic reflex response is, I'm good. I'm set. I'm happy.
Yep.
We're not looking. It's not the right time. And what I want to tell everyone who's hearing me is, don't be discouraged when you hear that. And if you're highly relational,
Yeah.
and if you're the kind of person who's like a peacekeeper, and the moment there's some conflict, you acquiesce, and your gut reaction is, well, I'm sorry to bother you. Thanks for your time. I'll keep you on the list and call you in 6 months. You're going to starve. Like that first no you get is automatic. So we need to be ready to bounce off that no and ask 2 more times for the meeting.
Yep.
And
Yep. I was just going to quickly say, Mike, to summarize a lot of what you've been saying, mindset, tone, objective, overcoming objections. I think overcoming objections, that first objection, especially on the phone, is such a good test of a salesperson because that truly exposes if they have the right mindset. And a lot of times those objections that are brought up, they're the same ones every time, right?
Right.
You have,
But
it's probably a list of 5 of the same ones that you get every time, right?
And you could rattle them off,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, we all know what they are. So you have some choices here. You could be prepared with a pretty clean, articulate comeback for each of those 5. I'm busy. We're not interested. My brother-in-law is my broker right now. It's the wrong time of year. We're happy. And then plug in whatever other 2 might come in. And I think you should have some good comebacks for those.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got one that I'll just share here with your listeners. It's the universal objection buster. And I call it the money line because it makes so many salespeople money. Regardless of what they throw back at you is the reason they can't meet. My comeback is always like, that's great. I hear that a lot. Let me ask you to visit with me anyway. You're busy. You're not shopping. You have a bad taste in your mouth from my agency from 13 years ago when you think we screwed you. I hear you. I get it. Visit with me anyway. And then you sell them on the value of the time they're going to spend. You're going to get a ton of value and ideas from the time we spend together. Even if there's no next step for me, let's get together. Grab your calendar.
That's amazing.
And you're taking away the resistance. Because what you're telling them is, I'm not going to make you buy from me. I'm not going to come ram this down your throat. But don't tell me no right away because you're going to get a lot of insight. You spend 20 minutes with me. I'm going to ask enough questions to open your eyes, and you're going to see some of the issues we're addressing for other companies like yours. You're going to leave with ideas and challenged, even if there's no next step for me. And I promise you, if you can sell the meeting, don't sell your solution, sell the meeting, sell the value, visit with me anyway. You're going to get ideas. You look so much like other plug-in the type of company. We have really helped a lot. You're going to enjoy this time together. I promise you're going to double or triple the number of meetings you get. And then everything changes for you.
That's gold.
Because once you get in, it's a different game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's gold. I really appreciate you breaking that down. And the other thing in cold calls, I think it'd be great for the audience if you gave a sample opening line. Because I think that's where a lot of people are just like, should I say, how are you? Should I greet them like I know them? Should I treat them like an old friend? Should I bring up an email that I sent them previously?
Yeah.
Do you have an ideal opening line?
I don't want to say ideal. I've got a couple that I like.
Okay.
And I'll give you a funny example of another salesperson uses, and I'll give you Jeb Blunt.
Okay.
My friend Jeb wrote Fanatical Prospecting. It's like the book on prospecting.
Okay.
I was honored to write the forward. He's got a simple line he uses. I'll tell you, I've got a combo of two phrases that I use. When I introduce myself, I tell them I head up something. Hey, it's Mike with ABC Agency. I head up our contractor business. Okay. Because when you say I head up, one, it makes you feel good. Plus, you're kind of communicating to the prospect that you're somebody. You're not some rep in a call center being fed, automated things from a dialer.
Mm-hmm.
I head up, and then I very quickly say, let me steal a minute. Pat, let me take a minute. I'm not asking for permission. I'm not saying is now a good time. I'm saying real assumptively, real conversation. Hey, Pat, let me take a minute. And then you go, okay. Or, hey, Pat, I'm helping a lot of other CFOs who are, and I get into it.
So after let me take a minute. You pause and wait for the other person to come back. Like,
I do,
okay.
because sometimes they tell you, no, Mike, I'm dying right now. In fact, my boss is down the hall and I'm late for a meeting. And when that happens, you know what you say? I hear you. I'll call you back on Friday. Hope you have a great meeting. And you score a relationship and a respect point. And you know what you do on Friday morning? You pick up the phone, you call the guy, hey, Rick, it's Mike. I caught you on Wednesday when you were running out to meet your boss. Let me take that minute now. Mm-hmm. 100% of the time they go, sure. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little less nervous for the second call because I've already called them once.
Yeah.
It's a little less cold. So yeah, it's just my thing. I'll give you Jeb's line. Jeb is just really straightforward. He says, Pat, the purpose of my call is, and then he uses that as the bridge to get into the story about the value he creates before he asks for the meeting.
Okay.
I say, let me take a minute. And then I would pivot into, I'm helping a lot of CFOs, or CFOs are looking to us when, or contract. I go my bridge line. I'll give you the craziest line I've ever heard, but it works for this woman who sells here in St. Louis.
Okay.
She's at a little software company. And she says, hi, Pat, this is Tiffany with ABC Software. I just want you to know this is a sales call.
Wow.
And I knew this girl's numbers, and I'm like, she's amazing. And I said, what the heck did you just say? Can you do that again? And I watched her do it again. And the prospect was like, okay. And she said, yeah, here's the deal. We're helping a lot of financial organizations who are stuck with this with their AP. They do some kind of AP automation thing with AP, and the end of the month close takes too long. And I'd love to visit with you because I think we have some solution. Can you grab your calendar? And they would be like, okay. And I watched her set a few appointments like that. And I'm like, you're telling them it's a sales call? And the only thing I could figure out, first I thought it was like, oh, she's flirty. Her name's Tiffany.
Right.
And I'm like, no, because I work with guys and girls and happy people and mean people. I think it was just so refreshingly honest.
Oh, yeah.
It was
seriously.
It was like a pattern interrupt. It was like, this is a sales call? Okay, this is different. Yeah. And I'm calling you because you look a lot like some of our best clients, and we're helping other financial organizations who are trapped with A and trying to achieve B. And I wanted to visit with you. And they're like, okay. So
when I get hit up by salespeople, a lot of times what the most frustrating part of it is, it feels like they're trying to trick me.
Right.
They're trying to catch me on the phone. They're trying to be like, oh, it's not extremely, it doesn't feel extremely authentic.
No. And Pat, let me add, I want to add two things on this prospecting piece because these are really important. The first one is, let me just give a 30-second commercial for the telephone.
Yeah.
I think we should use every ethical, appropriate, effective means available to us. So we should use social. You and I talked about that earlier in this recording, right? We should use email. We should use LinkedIn. We should send dimensional pieces. We should pop by and drop off a book or a note, like anything, but don't ignore the phone. And there are so many people in sales today. I'll make the case for you. The phone's working better than it has in a decade because no one uses it.
Yeah.
And the people that do use it don't use it well. Everyone has resorted to, frankly, what feels like automated spam, canned crap, emails and LinkedIn messages. Nobody feels an obligation to respond to someone. Everyone knows that's not real. And I've learned this from podcasting, and so have you. The connection that your followers have with you because they're listening to your voice, they feel like they know you, like there's a legit connection. The phone does that when you're prospecting.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes 4, 5, 6 messages to get a call back, but they're hearing your voice and you sound real and authentic and caring and empathetic, and you're dripping little value nuggets. So for those of you that are phone averse, and I get if you're under 30 years old, you definitely have that feeling. Like I've got kids that age, I know, like they didn't grow up dialing the phone and talking to people. Like do not dismiss the phone. It is your most important sales tool next to your calendar, which
I was just going to say, I was talking to my team the other day and I was like, if only the ability to speak to someone on the phone had come out after texting, I feel like everybody would be on the phone because it would be so amazing. It's like the connection and also the time you save and how real you feel there's no comparison.
Dude, that's brilliant. We could have a whole conversation and write an article together on what you just said. Mm-hmm. I've never ever thought about that. Mm-hmm. If the voice came after the text, we would think it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the opposite, right? And then here's the thing. We carry this mental baggage around. We think the phone is dirty, and like telemarketers do that. I'm not a telemarketer. No, you're not. But that's why you're not going to sound like that. Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you guys, the phone puts a person behind the prospecting.
Yeah.
So, and it's why it's a very important piece of the mix. And then the last piece is your calendar. You know, I've written some books. People always wonder, how do you write a book? You know what the author's standard response is? You put time on your calendar and you put your ass in a chair. And for an hour at a time, you write. And prospecting is the same thing. People listen to me. I mean, if you fell asleep, wake up and listen. Like prospecting, it doesn't call you. It's not urgent. You have all this urgent stuff in front of you, all these distractions, whether you're checking your Apple stock or your fantasy football team lineup, or you got clients that have customer service issues. That's always in front of you. You know what's never in front of you? Prospecting.
Yeah.
You have to put it in your calendar and you have to block the time and keep the hour. And in that hour, stay in proactive outbound mode because you got to get in the groove. Mm-hmm. And the more you do this, the better you're going to be, the more confident, the more success. And it doesn't take really long to get good at prospecting. You make 20 dials and you got to get comfortable. Like you start playing with the story, you start getting ready to expect the resistance and how you push past it. Like, so don't overlook the phone and don't overlook your calendar. Those are your most important sales weapons if you're going to grow your book.
One thing that really stood out to me, Mike, that I have to ask you about in your book is the positioning of where you sit in a meeting, in a face-to-face meeting. And it really stood out to me because I started at a company called Ace, and they trained us in meetings to always have our backs to the windows in the meeting because you're gonna be distracted if you're looking out the window all the time. But I like your philosophy so much better. Can you break down where a person should sit at a table?
I love that you're asking that, Pat. No one ever asked that. I mean, it's a tiny little piece in one section of the chapter on sales calls. And I'm very intentional about this because of the message it sends. My theory is, let me say this first. I hate the awkward adversarial dynamic that you tend to feel when you're in a meeting with a prospect. Like, it's like we're pitching, they're resisting, and we're either figuratively or literally sitting on opposite sides of the table. So my coaching when it comes to where we sit physically is I'm trying to break down that barrier. I don't want that adversarial dynamic. We're not warring parties, like negotiating a peace deal. We want to come across as that we're their partner. We're there to consult with them and work with them, not present at them. So whenever possible, I want to sit like catty corner, kind of next to, alongside. And you can't sit on the same side of the table if it's one-on-one, because that would be ridiculously awkward. Almost like even my wife and I, when you go on a date, like
a restaurant,
you don't rarely sit only on Valentine's do we sit on the same side of the table.
I was thinking about that. When I was reading through it, I was like, it is funny seeing couples that sit on the same side of the table when they're at dinner.
But could we at least sit like a 90-degree angle,
right?
Like on the corner of the table. So there's the table isn't between us at the same level, because what I'm trying to communicate is I'm here to help you and we're going to work on this together. My friend Anthony Anarino, who I think is the smartest guy in this business, he wrote the foreword to 2 of my books. This is his expression. He says, sales isn't something you do to somebody. It's something that you do with them for their benefit. It's a freaking brilliant statement.
That is.
And so what I say is, the reason that intrigued you, that little piece in the book, is because I'm trying to break down that adversarial feeling and make them. I want to communicate physically by how I sit and posture that I'm here for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt that.
It's very different in what it communicates. Yeah.
Seriously. I felt that sitting across the table and like just sitting at the head, or, that 90-degree angle rule, I think is such a great specific takeaway. And Mike, I know we have 3 minutes here, so I just want to make sure we're on track. We have 5 rapid fire questions that we end each of our
These
podcast
always scare
episodes
me.
with.
These always scare me at the end of a podcast. All right, I'm gearing up.
Okay. I think you'll like them. I think they'll be really easy for you. So to start off, do you have a favorite sales movie?
Tommy Boy, because it's everybody's favorite sales movie.
Okay.
And it's not that it's such a great movie, but some of those scenes are so instructive of how either not to sell, or when things finally click for him, how to sell.
That's a great answer. We've had a lot of sales experts on and no one said that. And I can see our videographer, Chris, over here nodding his head in agreement. So that is a phenomenal, unique answer that I wasn't expecting. Okay. This one, I know you break down in the book, but it's a pretty simplistic one. How should salespeople dress for meetings with their prospects?
I think you can't go wrong dressing one notch better than they're dressing. And especially in the world that involves financial things.
Yep.
They're looking at your shoes and that you're clean. And it's not even as much that you're super fashionable. It's that what you're wearing is fresh and communicates that you bring value and you're doing okay.
Yeah.
I
think that's such good advice, because so many people are confused about that. And I saw with my dad, because he went from selling to any company that would have him to tech companies, but he couldn't dress. You can't walk into a tech company in a suit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's too many notches above.
No, you look like you don't belong there. I've got clients in the construction space, and when they're selling, I mean, they're wearing boots and Carhartts, right? And safety helmets and going on site. And that's what they need to wear. They need to look respectable.
Yep.
They need to wear stuff it isn't torn and dirty, but you dress appropriately. But if you go one click better than your prospect, you're probably really safe right there.
Okay. Question number 3. I know you're from New York, but you live in St. Louis.
Pizza. Okay. What was the question? Sorry.
St. Louis Cardinals or New York Yankees?
Okay. I grew up a Mets fan.
Okay.
Although my kids one of them particularly was a big Yankees fan. But the answer is pizza. I'm fat because I love New York pizza, and I'm a pizza connoisseur, and you cannot get New York pizza for the most part here in St. Louis. But you live here, it's a baseball town.
Okay.
In fact, we had a football team for 20 years and got screwed out of the Rams. I mean, you can't live here and not have Cardinal apparel and become a Cardinal fan. It's almost a religion. So
New York pizza. I hear that Joe's is the best pizza in New York. Do you have a place that you like?
I like almost all New York pizza, honestly.
Okay.
I'm not even that picky.
Yeah.
So
okay,
depends
cool.
what borough you're in, what borough of New York City and what friend I'm with, because everyone has an opinion. So
Okay. Out of the 3 books that you've written, do you have a favorite?
This is going to sound so weird. Sales Truth might be my favorite, and it's the least successful commercially. Like New Sales Simplified is off the charts, legendary. And Sales Manager Simplified is the one that gets me all this business because it's written for sales leaders. But Sales Truth is probably the funniest and best written.
Okay.
But it doesn't have the following that the other 2 do.
Okay. All right. I haven't read that one, so I will have to put that on the list. Final question. What is the toughest sale that you've ever made?
Katie Knockenhauer, who is now Katie Weinberg, my wife. In fact, the dedication to my first book, it says, she is the best proof that I can sell. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because she is so much better looking and so much better character of a human than I am. Like, no one that meets us thinks that she got a better deal. But I mean, truly, if you would have seen us when I first met her, like I was in this little Bible study at my church, and these guys knew I liked her, and they set up a group date. Uh-huh. We had like a murder mystery dinner date. Yeah. So the eight of us could go on a date for the purpose of me hanging out with her. And when that night was over, they were great guys. And when that night was over, they came up to me and they put me their arm around, like, Mike, I'm so sorry. This girl has no interest in you. So that's like one of my great pride stories, because we were married 26 happy years, and That is my best sales story right there.
Well, I know we're running up on time here, Mike. I think that's a phenomenal way to end the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. Would love to have you come on again because I know there's so many insurance professionals out there that are looking to improve their sales ability. So thank you so much. Any final thoughts that you want to leave the audience with?
Keep it simple. First of all, let me just say this. Thank you. What a treat. I can't wait to listen to this. I learn every time I'm on a podcast, and I love the questions you asked. And I wish your audience huge success. My final word is keep it simple. The world is crazy. COVID is crazy. Politicians are crazy. Focus. Make a list. Sharpen your story. Carve out time on your calendar. Prospect to get meetings, and then run great meetings. You do those 5 things, it always works. Go drive more new sales.
You're the man, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'll talk to you soon. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Varuna. Varuna is the agency management system of the future, built on the #1 customer relationship management tool in the world, Salesforce. Varuna allows you to customize your system, workflows, reports, and dashboards in minutes, and allows you to gain actionable insights about your business in real time, letting you use this intelligence to grow your business in multiples. Varuna allows you to know your business so that you can grow your business. Please visit varuna.com to learn more.